Jack's question is, how do you know which put to buy? Buying the put costs you more money, so you have to exceed the price you'd like to get on your stock plus the price of the put you bought. So how much of a difference of what you're willing to buy the put at? Okay. Let's go to the profit and loss chart of Barrick Gold. We're talking about Barrick Gold now at $20.11. I could buy the 17th of April, 195 days out in time, 21 strike, for about $227 to $230. Now, that's, as Jack mentioned, pretty much close to a 12%, 13% cost increase from 2011. Now, I'm buying the 21 strike, so 89 cents of this price is intrinsic value. I'm guaranteed to get that back. I'm guaranteed to get 21 back for this position in the worst case scenario. But yes, Jack, my cost went up to $22.41. Guaranteed to get 21 back, so the maximum risk is $141 or 6.3 of the total invested amount. Now, these, as I mentioned, Jack, are the preferred criteria discussed in the full course of the blueprint of what we look for related to the time frame, maximum risk. Keep your risk to single digits. You get that best structure going slightly in the money and paying a little bit extra, as you just saw. We don't want to go too deep in the money, not because the cost is so high, but because now the potential probability of profit is lowering. We don't go more than usually 15% in the money on the put. And of course, we're going to look for some of those stock criteria I mentioned. Stocks in an uptrend, looking for some volatility, for some movement, positive earnings per share growth. Those are the things we look for. Now, why? Let's take a look at the profit and loss chart at Barrick Gold. Yeah, I'm gonna do this first, Jack, and then we're gonna take a step back. I'm sorry. Just looked at the stock chart, and yeah, this is a negative MACD as well. But if I see a bottom, that's what I was looking for. Why I didn't enter it the other day? Sorry about that, Jack. Let me go to the profit and loss chart. All right. Now, Jack, your main comment is, how do you know which put to buy? Mike, you're showing me that you're buying a 195-day out put that's above the current stock price, and you're willing to pay that 12%, 11% higher price for the position. Why? Because it's been proven that this is what works, Jack. This is the best approach for this structure. In the blueprint and in many videos we have on YouTube, we discuss what's called the 3 core principles of radioactive trading. And it's really the 3 core principles of any options trade if you break it down. The first one is obvious. Kurt calls it, he's fond of acronyms, so he calls it FIST. And what FIST means is force an ideal size trade. Now, Jack, you know this. As much as a winner if you think you have, as much as a stock, as we've talked about with Kirk talking about his stock technicals that he feels confident with, what I like to use as my stock technicals when I look at the chart, the way that I have it set up, just because I think that I've got the perfect setup, am I going to go start buying calls with 90% of my options trading portfolio? God, no. It's a leverage trade, and I can quickly see 85, 90, 100% losses. You know this, Jack, I know. So forcing an ideal size trade, if I'm trading a leveraged long call position, I'm probably only putting in 4 or 5% of my total portfolio value, because if I'm wrong, in a few days, I could see close to an 80 to 90% loss in that position. I trade leveraged bull put credit spreads with 10 to 15% of my options trading portfolio. Why only 10 or 15%? Because every 12 to 15 months, or like 15 to 17 months, an event occurs where all 3 or 4 bull put positions I have open, even if they were 3 days to expiration and showed a profit, a sudden event comes out, and now all of them are at a 50% loss, and I need to liquidate those positions at that time because I can't allow the loss to go bigger. Okay? Forcing an ideal size trade. Did I force an ideal size trade? Well, honestly, there's a second layer of protection we have where if I have a $50,000 portfolio, or I'm allocating $50,000 to married puts, Jack, I want to make sure that the total monetary risk here is no more than, say, 1 to 2% of my total portfolio value. So we're talking that the monetary risk here should only be about $500 to $1,000. So that dictates what? I'm probably only trading 500 shares and 5 contracts of this position. So even if I was wrong, Jack, in the worst case scenario, meaning I held Barrick Gold all the way to April expiration, accepted no dividends to cut down the risk, did no other income methods to cut down the risk, cut down my cost basis, and get extra profits, and Barrick is below 21 on April 17th. That's when I'm at the full loss on the trade. Is my break even 22.38? Yes, only 195 days away. Again, if the stock moves up 50 cents on Monday, I'm going to see a 20-25% liquidation profit on my position. So the delta of my put is only around 0.45, 0.5, maybe 0.55. And if the stock continues up as I'm expecting in this case, that negative delta of the put is going to continue to drop down to 0.4, 0.35, 0.3. So for every dollar the stock continues to move up, I'm losing less on the put, gaining more positive frequency on the stock. Positive delta, I should say, not frequency. Forcing an ideal size trade. Don't risk more monetarily than you can afford in any one position, and this forces you into that without having to do any extra math. Even if I just did 100 shares, it's forcing me into an ideal size trade. All right, number 2, the red line. Again, Kurt's acronyms, he loves them. He's clever with them too, don't get me wrong. Radioactive decay line, or the red line as he likes to call it. The decay, naturally, of an option is not linear. And we're talking about the extrinsic or the time value decay, Jack. It's not linear. You tend to see the option's time frame expiration or value go to 0, the extrinsic value go to 0 along this curve. You're about 210 days out here, maybe 180 here, getting closer to 120 here, 90 days to expiration here, 60 days here, we start to see almost 50% more decrease, is close to that, 30 days to expiration, 10 days to expiration, and boom, you're out. So you're saying to me, Mike, I just looked at Barrick Gold's chart. Jack didn't say this, but I'm saying, for example, we're going to take a look at this too. Mike, I just looked at Barrick Gold, and I looked at the October 21 put that you're talking about because it's forcing an ideal size trade. It's keeping your risk to single digits. Well, I could buy the 21 strike put for Barrick Gold for only $1, half the price that you're paying for this April put. You're right. You buy the October put for $1, and the stock goes up to 21.10. Your put expires worthless. You want to stay in the trade. Now you buy a November 22 put for $1, and it goes up to 22.30, and this expires worthless. Then you buy a December put for $1 at the 23 strike. It goes up to 23.40, and the put expires worthless. You've now spent $3 through December, where if I've only paid $227 to be protected for 195 days out in time. Okay? So this is why we target the 150 days or more. So even in the first 20 to 30 days, the stock doesn't move in our desired direction. We've only given up 6, 7, maybe 10% of the time premium on the long-term put because they behave differently. And if I want to stay in the position long-term, by the way, after other adjustments, when I get to that 45 to 40 day out mark and I want to stay in the position, Jack, I'm likely going to roll the put further out in time if I still stay in the trade. The married put structure, the puts we suggest, 1 or 2 strikes in the money, not going more than 15 or 20% in the money, keeping the risks to about a 3 to 8, 3 to 9%. Why 3? Because there is such a thing as too little risk. I'm going to cover that for you in just a moment. And putting time on our side by buying the proper time frame. And number 3 is what's known as the at-the-money bell curve. You look at any option chain, Jack, regardless of the stock, regardless of implied volatility, the at-the-money option, in this case the 20 strike for any expiration date, is going to have the highest extrinsic or time value compared to any other options across that same expiration time frame. Related to call options, of course, out of the money calls, say the 21 strike, 22 strike, 23 strike, or in the money puts, they're going to have lower time premium, extrinsic value. Now, on a call side, going to in the money, 19, 18, 17, you're going to see higher prices because you're paying $1 for intrinsic value. This might only be $1.25 total. 25 cents of it is the time value or the extrinsic value, Jack. The $1 on the call is the intrinsic value. So it's a higher price. And this might be 210 at the 18 strike with the stock trading at 20. Okay. Actually, it's 2011. So yeah, this would be about 220. But it's the same thing on the out of the money calls. There's no intrinsic price and the premium is lower. Now flip it for a put. These are now in the money put options. So yeah, my 21 strike, I'm paying $2.27 for out to April. $1, okay, 89 cents of that is intrinsic value. So I'm only paying $1.40 of extrinsic value. If I went up to the 22, that might only be 80 cents of extrinsic value, but it's going to cost me $2.80. So I'm covering the $2 of intrinsic value, but the extrinsic value is declining. What does that at the money bell curve show us? Well, when I'm buying, I want to be buying on the outside wings to pay into the lower time value. And when I'm selling, I want to be selling closer to that top premium that's giving me the highest time value. So now you can kind of see how this applies to any options trade, whether I'm doing credit spreads. I want to be a certain range out of the money with a certain probability, but I want to be shorter term because I want the decay to be rapid in my favor and these options to expire worthless. Covered calls, very similar. You get the best extrinsic value at the money, but if you want more protection, you're selling in the money covered calls. If you're more speculative, you're willing to take on more risk, you're getting less premium selling the out of the money, hoping for an increase in that price. But to that one point of your question, Jack, how much of a difference between the price you bought the stock and what you're willing to buy the put at, focusing on the break even of the extra cost, that's only relevant at April expiration, 195 days away, if I do nothing between now and expiration. Okay, now let's clear that up. I'm going to go back to the search tool very quickly. We're going to take a look at Barrick Gold, but I'm going to go to what's called the search by symbol tool. Now it knows I'm linking from Barrick Gold. The system knows I'm looking at married put, so it's going to show me several of the April married put positions on Barrick Gold. Our 21 strike we were just evaluating, Jack, that came up on the default search as the preferred structure, giving us that risk of 6.3% or so, or 6% at midpoint. Okay? And we're only 4.4% in the money. As you mentioned, we increase our cost basis up to $22.40, somewhere along those lines. Now, if I went to the April 22 strike, what am I paying? I'm paying $2.90. That's right in the wheelhouse of what I said without even looking at the option chain, wasn't it? Just go back a moment. But now my risk is only $1.04. Why? Because $1.89 of that $2.90 is intrinsic value. We're really only about $1 at midpoint, $1.04 of extrinsic value. The maximum risk on the married put is the extrinsic or time value. Here's my position. Here's the at the money position, the 20 strike with 1.86 at risk on the position. Cost of 171. It's lower than my 227 price we were evaluating, but there's no intrinsic here. This 171 is essentially the true risk, and the stock has to drop, Jack, 11 cents before that insurance kicks in. So at the ask price, it's 186. Our risk was the 141 because we've got 89 cents of intrinsic value. Now you see the price is going lower here, 126, 90, 63. This is the at the money bell curve. But now, oh wait, Mike, the prices are going higher here, so you're wrong. But now we have more intrinsic value. This 360 or 365 for that April 23 strike, it's $2.89 in the money. So really, the extrinsic is only 76 and 56. It's almost the same as it is down here. So that's our at the money bell curve. The extrinsic value is lower here in the money and out of the money. So why not pay a cheaper price, Jack, and buy the out-of-the-money put? Remember what I told you, we're trying to keep the risks to single digits between 3 to 9%. If I buy the cheap put, the April 17, even though it's 195 days out and I only pay 63 cents for it, what insurance do I have? None. Until the stock drops to 17. Another $3.11, and I paid 68 cents for it as well. So now my risk is $3.79 or 18.2% of what I paid in the position. Sort of the old axiom, Jack, you get what you pay for. Isn't the cheaper put better? Only if you're willing to take 3 times the amount of potential risk that I'm taking. Am I expecting Barrick Gold to fall below 17 by April? No. But again, the point of a protective structure, to put yourself in a position to force an ideal size trade, take advantage of the radioactive decay line or the time decay curve, and using the principles of the at-the-money bell curve, these 3 strikes here, even though the 20 is right at the money, carries a risk of 8.5%, but these 3 would be the preferred range. What's wrong with the 23 strike? It's about 15% in the money with a risk of 3.2%. Nothing. It's extremely conservative. But now, Jack, you're still right. My expectation is the stock might be trading up at this price in the next 20 to 40 days. I have a lower potential of probability with these lower strike, deeper in the money put options around that 15 to 20% range. I can just go only 4% in the money, 10% in the money, keep a solid controlled risk between 4 to 6%, 4 to 6.5%, and still be able to do the other adjustments in the income method sooner to start lowering this initial at risk, increasing the profits on the position, and more. That's what we look for when we do the married put. Now, why not a shorter term trade? Let's talk about that. I'd mentioned the October. I think Barrick has weeklies, but we're just going to focus on standard October expiration, 21 days out. 14 days out in time. Remember I said that the 20 strike, okay, it's 51 cents. All right, the 21 strike we were looking at, okay, it's at 111. So it's about 24 cents of risk. So I pay 111 for the 21 strike, and 14 days Barrick Gold's above 21, and this put expires worthless. I buy another put for November expiration at 123 or 130. The cost I've totally entered into those 2 puts now is equal to the 240 I paid for the April put. That's out 195 days out in time. The option that's 5 months out in time is not 5 times the cost of the same strike. Same way the options pricing works. So we're not there at that point. Okay? It doesn't make sense. And you can say, oh, what about the cheaper put? I buy the out of the money 20 strike and I pay 51 cents. Then I buy the November 20 strike for 50 cents. And I buy the December for 50 cents. Okay, now you're at $1.50. I'm still at 240 in the position. And I'm still out to April. You'd hit my price in February by buying these cheap out of the money puts, but you're risking 3% each month. I'm risking 6% for 6.5 months. In addition to those 3 core principles I mentioned, another principle we like to focus on here is when I'm selling, I want to be selling near term to get that more rapid time decay and get the higher annualized return. When I'm buying, I want to be buying farther out in time, because the option that's 6 months out is not 6 times the cost of the same strike in the closer in month. You're paying a lower annualized price buying further out in time than buying month by month, even though it looks cheaper. That's sort of the illustration of those 3 points related to the search by symbol tool, comparing other strikes around it, in and out of the money, 3 core principles, why we prefer the married put, and the structure that we're looking for. And yes, there is such a thing as too deep in the money, where your expectancy of profit lowers too much. And if you're going with the cheap put, whether it's shorter term or farther out in time, the old axiom, get what you pay for.